What is up, guys? So in this video we're gonna learn how to get input from the user and then use in our program. Until now, what we have been doing is we have been adding few numbers and then just displaying the result on the screen, or we have been using the variables in some print statements and then just displaying the output on the screen, but we haven't taken any input from the user. So, and yeah, it's one of the most essential part of programming. So let's get started. So the thing that you need to know before you take any input from the user is that you need a place to store those input. So you can store them in variables. So first, let's go ahead and define a variable. Let's say number, and then this number is going to store whatever the user enters as a string. So it does not really matter, it's just a name number, but even if the user enters some text, that's going to be stored as a string, and even if the user enters some number, it's going to be stored as a string. So let's see. So to get the input, we use this input function, and then inside here, inside the braces, we can use the prompt to let the user know what you want to display on the screen, to let him know that he needs to do something. So let's say enter something. So it could be anything, and then we're gonna want to print whatever gets stored in this number. So let's print the number. So what what this two line what this two line of code means is that first it takes the input from the user, giving the prompt saying enter something, and then whatever the user enters, it's going to be stored in this variable number, and then it's going to print out that number. So it's going to print the value that's been stored in this number. So let's see, enter something. So let's say I write Hank, and then when I press enter, it's going to print out Hank. Okay, so now let's see, if I add some number, let's say 89, press enter, it's gonna say 89. But don't get confused, this 89 is a string, so in the output you can't really make out what is a string and what's not. So but whatever input the user enters through this input, it usually goes as a string and gets stored in the variable unless we convert it to something else. So let's build a program where we get some values from the user and then we add or multiply and then just display the result to the user. So let's start. So let's start by defining the variables. Let's say num1 is a variable, and then we're gonna want to get the input, giving the prompt enter a number. Okay, okay, now whatever the user gonna input now, it's gonna be as a string, but we want it as an integer, or if you want that as a decimal or integer and even decimal, you can use float, and if you want that only as an integer, you can use int. So let's say I want as only as an integer, so I'll use int, and then inside of it I'm going to use this input. So what's this gonna do is it's gonna get the value, it's gonna convert it into integer, and then it's gonna store it in this num1 variable. So let's do the second number, int, and then input, and then enter the second number. Okay, so I'll enter the first number. Okay, now let's add these two and then let's see what happens. Num1 plus num2. Okay, let's see. So first prompt, it says enter a number, let's say 78, second one it says enter another number, I mean the second one, it says 76, and then when I hit enter, it's gonna give the result. So 78 plus 76, it's 154. Now what if we add some decimal numbers? So let's say 89.7, and then when we hit enter, it's gonna give an error saying invalid literal for int with base 10, and then blah blah. So basically what it's trying to say is that you can't use int and you can't convert a decimal to an integer. So this 89.7, you can't convert this into an integer since it is a decimal number. So the way we get out of this error is by using this float. So what it does is it just converts whatever decimal or even integer into floats, and then it just stores back into the variable. So now when we run it, it's gonna say 89.7. Let's zoom in a bit, and then second one 76. So you can see here this number has a decimal and this has no decimal, but still this one is going to be stored in this num2 as decimal, so it's gonna store that as 76.0, and then when we add, it says 165.7. Let's do another test. 78, 56, it's gonna give us 134.0 because these two are floats now, not integers, so we're gonna get this dot 0. So yeah, that's basically it for today, and yeah, hope you guys learned something, and if you guys liked it, so please give a like, and yeah, subscribe if you haven't, and thanks for watching.